Welcome to the Copilot Show, where I interview Microsoft staff innovating with AI. I hope you will find this podcast educational and inspire you to do more with this great technology. Now, let's get on with the show. Welcome to the Microsoft Innovation Podcast. Today's guest is from Redmond, Washington, and she's helping developers build the future with AI. Full links for the show notes are available. Please welcome Yina, Vice President at Microsoft, and one of the driving forces behind Microsoft Graph and Azure AI Foundry.
Hello, Mark. Thank you for having me today in the show.
Great to have you on. You've had a long history in Microsoft. And before we get into our discussion, particularly around AI Foundry and the community, can you tell me a bit about food, family, and fun? What do they mean to you?
Oh, food, family, and fun. Oh my gosh. First, for me, everything is around family. I am a mother of four
Wow.
very active boys. And I enjoy spending time with them, and I am extremely proud of who they are. In the fun side, I love sailing and spend time sailing with my boys, of course, and my husband, and I love traveling as well. And in the food side, oh my gosh, I enjoy all types of foods and really like learning about new types of cuisine and like getting to just share meals with friends and families.
Nice. You would love New Zealand. There's a lot of sailing opportunities in New Zealand. So,
yeah, one that I've not been yet to, so definitely on bucket list.
Nice. Tell me about your journey to your role now in AI Foundry, because you've obviously had a lot of history in Microsoft Graph, and I think the unsung hero of M365 Copilot is the graph, because it makes everything possible at unbelievable level. So tell us about that journey, your experience there, and then what's your major focus in FY26?
Sounds good. Well, I actually just completed 15 years at Microsoft.
Wow.
And it's been an incredible journey. As part of that, I've had the opportunity to work with amazing talent across the company, amazing teams, great products. One of the incredible force multipliers that happens when you work in a company like this is that the impact that you get to have across so many different industries and so many different locales and markets is just tremendous. So I'm very proud of that. 14 of those years I actually spent on our productivity suite, the teams that build product. I started with SharePoint.
Wow.
And I worked a couple of years in the SharePoint team. I was part of the team that was transitioning SharePoint from a box product that was all sold on a CD every 3 years to a cloud service, specifically doing all of the developer platform, moving from full trust solution to running that as a multi-tenant isolated solutions in the cloud. And that started my journey with building for developers as customers. And as part of that, during those 14 years that I spent on what at Microsoft is the Enterprise and Devices Organization, I worked on programmability and extensibility across just driving that ecosystem. And that led to the birth of Microsoft Graph. It's how do we make sure that we have a consolidated data model across all of the different products that make up Microsoft 365? And yes, of course, Mark, you're right. It's a huge differentiator from just a plain LLM or chat-based application running outside of the context of what customers' data have, and being able to ground on all of that data, whether it is mail, calendar, Teams, all of the SharePoint documents, all of your OneDrive files, all of that content that makes you and your group and your organization so unique, right? And I had an amazing time driving that. As I was wrapping up my time in the Microsoft 365 organization, I worked on driving programmability for our internal platform, our external platform, and Copilot extensibility as well. And then the opportunity knocked my door to move over to drive product for Azure AI Foundry. And I've been actually, as part of completed 15 years at Microsoft, I've also completed my first year in this team. I joined as the product leader for Foundry, and as that means I lead the team that drives all of the model offerings. So how to enable customers to create, customize, and consume models at scale. All of our agentic platform offers. So like how do we make sure that like we have the right set of capabilities and functionality so customers can build single agent, multi-agents, and like the connection with models, but like the full life cycle of those applications, including connection to knowledge, connection to tools, but also all of the observability. So like how do you make sure that those agents are behaving as you're expecting, right? Both from a quality and from a security and risk perspective. So that's part of the portfolio that I drive here within the Foundry team. It's been a fantastic year. Like there's so many things happening in the AI ecosystem. Every single day, there is something new. Like we are constantly bringing new value to customers, releasing new models. This, for example, is a week of a lots of releases we're going to have. Some that I can't, like today we release some of the BFL models, some other models are coming down later in the week. So it is always such a dynamic environment. And like there's so many things happening across the industry that is just fantastic to see. I mean, like if you, like the pace of innovation right now is just mind blowing. If you think about it, in just a short period of time, AI has evolved from being just a simple rule-based system, data-driven machine learning, to now having this agentic set of architectures. Like it's evolved from like just being able to like have a chat-based interface to like being able to create agents that can plan, that can reason, that can act, that can adapt. So it is just mind-blowing. It's just like, and as you can see in like my excitement about the things that I get to work on, I'm just like jazzed about the things that I get to do.
I love that when you're talking about the speed of innovation, because I felt for the last 2 years, Microsoft has been throwing AI into everything, and definitely not in a haphazard way, but I feel like it's now really consolidating into some really exciting, like you can see it's like settling into now the groove of really high value delivery. One of the things that I often get asked is, what is AI Foundry? And the analogy, which it might have even been you that said this about a year ago, which is imagine a workshop, you've got your tool bench, you've got your building materials, and you can go in there and you've got your LLMs, you've got your APIs, you've got everything that you can pull together and create something from. Is that still the analogy you're using, or do you have another one?
Yeah, actually, we think about it as helping customers, like we use a lot the factory analogy, right? Like imagine you have an assembly line where you're going from here's a product idea to like here's the things that we will need to building the set of ingredients or tools that we will need to build it, to all the way to take that into production. So Foundry enables that for developers that want to infuse AI into their applications, whether it is that they're building a brand new app or an agentic system or an automation, or they're like infusing AI into their existing apps, right? Like they can come to Foundry and they can find the models, the agents, the observability, the end-to-end set of like tools that they need, fully integrated with the IDE. So like we have like all of the Visual Studio Code experiences, the APIs, the SDKs, like all of the things that you're going to need to like be successful, like infusing AI into your applications.
Another thing I've come across is which AI to choose, which one. And this is coming recently. I was involved with the executive meetings around education, university level education. And as somebody in the ATS part of the Microsoft organization, I'm like, how do I differentiate why Microsoft is the better tool? And for me, I was like, it's the graph, because AWS doesn't have that deep look into an organization's day-to-day activity. People live in Outlook, people live in Teams, people live in, their document storage environments, where AWS doesn't have that front end into everybody's day-to-day life that Microsoft has, making Copilot particularly a massively compelling story. Is there anything else when you talk about differentiation of what Microsoft offering is compared to the other hyperscalers in market that you kind of bring to bear?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that I would say that there is a lot of great product out there when it comes to empowering lots of different set of personas to like leverage AI in their day-to-day workflows, whether it is IT admins, end users, developers, and a lot of different functions. One of the key differentiators at Microsoft is like that we have that end-to-end suite of products and that integrate together, right? Like if you start with like just all of us as end users, as you're saying, that spend hours a day on Outlook and Teams and like, writing documents and collaborating and like just having conversations, and all of that information that is flowing in Microsoft 365 is leveraged by Copilot to provide these experiences, right? Then like also if you are wanting to like go beyond what Copilot offers from out of the box, you have tools like Copilot Studio to like, fully be able to create your own agents, to create your multi-agent systems, like without any knowledge about code or any knowledge about like, how the underlying models work. You can create very complex solutions with low code, no code using a tool like Copilot Studio. And then if you look at like, that's on the, I will say, employee productivity, the productivity suite. But like, then if you're building solutions, right, like Microsoft is a platform company. And like, we have not only the opportunity to integrate with all of the Microsoft 365 ecosystem, but also like, all of the suite of products that we have. Like think about data for a second, right? Like AI is great. The models are evolving every single day. There is something new that is coming out when it comes to capabilities, functionality, how fast can they process, how cheap it is to process. But like all of that is only going to be as good as the inputs that you give it, right? And like across Microsoft's data state, we have both the unstructured data, the structured data, the public data. All of that can come together in a product like Fabric, right? And like I'll have all of the AI capabilities also embedded into that. So across the stack, like we have all of these different product offers for different personas, and they're all now, like as you were saying, Mark, being supercharged with AI. And like as you see all Microsoft doing that, like the platform that they're doing, like every single product of Microsoft that is like infusing AI into their offering is using Foundry underneath the covers. And that's the same platform offering that we offer to our customers as they want to develop their own solutions, right? And we see customers doing that across business to consumer scenarios, business to business scenarios, internal productivity scenarios. They typically start more from like, I will say conversational type of agents, building some of these like conversational experience, but then they go more into like business process automation, full autonomous workflows powered by AI, multi-agent orchestration. And like, it's just, I don't know, across the stack, whether it is internally at Microsoft, we use Foundry to power our products. And then we also offer that to our customers as well.
So tell me about the customer adoption trends, and probably from two different lenses. Enterprise customers that are really, consuming and using Foundry at scale, but then also the developer community, their adoption, just from a lens perspective. What are developers building that surprise you? What are you seeing from an adoption perspective that kind of delights you, I suppose?
Yeah. I mean, like, it's one of the things that I always have loved about working on platform is that I get to see a lot of the different scenarios that our customers build, and across so many different industries and across so many different types of applications. So right now we have over 75,000 organizations that are using Azure AI Foundry. And, a lot of them like are enterprises that are like building, as I mentioned, some of like these interactive experiences, others that are building full automation of business processes, others that are like, building a more consumer facing solutions. And I think across all of them, there's like examples that I always like, oh my gosh, is like the things that they're doing is just mind blowing. Like automation perspective. Like, for example, the other day we were having a conversation with BMW, and BMW like is looking at like how do they do manual data transfer from on-prem processing of like all of the hundreds and thousands of signals that they get from like their sensors that are in the car. And then they've developed a solution powered by Azure OpenAI. And then like, to make sure that they can like greatly expedite the processing time of data, the generation of the insights, like the amount of vehicles that they can capture, how much that they can like, process all of that information and really generate insights across their organization. So that's one example. Another example is insurance companies. Like we have like a customer like Providence who's like is handling, this is more on the healthcare actually, handling an overwhelming volume of patient messages. Like think about disrupted care, right? Like how much time, like, whether it is like the actually medical professional or the staff that are supporting those functions, the amount of time that they just spend on data processing, like, right? And if that's can completely be taken care of by an ambient AI, where then it improves the time that actually the healthcare providers can focus on care for the patient, right? And so that's another just great example of not just automating, but humanizing some of the applications of AI. We have customers I'm just trying to bring examples. EY, for example, is making sure that all of the tools that they're building internally within the organization are inclusive for neurodivergent employees.
Yes.
So they've co-developed inclusive features using AI, and they've enhanced accessibility and productivity of their solutions. We have customers like Heineken. They developed an internal solution that's called Hoppy, and it's all about how do they supercharge the productivity of all of their employees. And as such, we have lots and lots of customer examples of as I mentioned, organizations that are thinking about how do they give their employees more capabilities with AI, whether they give their customers. There's a lot of examples on customer service, right? How do they provide a better customer service? How do they generate new value using AI? It's just really, really great to see. But I will say the set of examples that get closer to my heart is when we get that amplification of the human capabilities. For example, the healthcare one, right? You can say now doctors can focus more of their attention and their care on the patients, as opposed to filling out a report and doing all of these different things. And we have examples like that, a ton.
We've seen a lot for developers about, is it worth to do a STEM degree and get into development? Is development going away? And then we're seeing developers that augment what they do with AI, supercharging them, right? Allowing them to do so much more. And I don't know if you'd see this data, but are you seeing more people come to Foundry that weren't what's called the traditional developer, that are more in that vibe coding space? They want a robust, they want a trustworthy platform that Microsoft provides, that are now starting to use the tooling a lot more because it's easy to access it from I can create something without having, a data scientist and 50 engineers and things like that. I can actually take my concept into reality quicker.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think one of the things that AI is definitely doing is democratizing access to the technology itself, right? And I'll give you an example of how we use it internally on my team. Our product making craft is evolving significantly. In the past, you will have a PM in my team maybe spend time learning about the market, learning about customers, and then writing a document, a spec that says this is all of the user journeys and scenarios that we need to support, maybe helping design the APIs. Now, the jump is not so much into the document, but in the showing. It's okay, so here's a prototype that we've done of how the UI would look like, and very much detailed set of flows. And here's the mock-ups of the APIs, when you just can start doing them. In a way that you can produce that with AI that just help gets us faster to the outcome and to clarity across the team, right? So that is definitely, I think that, it's helping a wider audience to get faster to some of these conceptual ideas and being able to see them on a more tangible way. Now, I also want to say it's not taking a solution from idea to code is one thing, but then taking it code to production is another thing. And I still think that there's a lot of you're either using a software as a service like Copilot Studio that helps you gets you on rails for some of that, or as a developer, you're still wiring up a lot of all of the different services. Where's your app logic going to run? Where is your data going to be stored? Some of these things you still need to architect, right? But then you spending that time more on that solution, right? On architecting the solution and thinking about what are the things that you need based on their scenario, and not so much on, the more, I will say, not as fun activities, right? For example, validating, unit testing, and all of these different things is you can use AI to generate a lot of those today. And you focus a lot of your time on what are the new capabilities, what are the set of things that you want to bring into your solution.
One of the things I've come across is that there are a lot of enterprise customers. They've got stuck in prototype land or POCs, right? They've got to POC, but there seems to be a disconnect between taking a POC from POC into production and productionizing, like you're saying. Are you seeing that? Why do you think it's there? What is that struggle? Do they choose the wrong thing to prototype? In other words, where they're just trying to create a shiny new toy rather than something that solved a real business need or something that was going to add so much value that they wanted to get it to production quickly? What are you seeing?
I think that wave one of AI was definitely a lot of experimentation and like seeing a lot of like trying to understand like what is it useful for? How do we integrate with it? Like what are some of the use cases that like can be applicable? And companies have been like experimenting. Like there's a lot of now that is going into production, right? Like that is now going into like, okay, here's how we think about the amount of investment that is needed to take a solution, to build a solution on the space. Then like here's how we think about measuring ROI, right? Like, and you're gonna have to go through those journeys to like understand is like, okay, are we thinking about it the same way, or like how do we need to completely rethink about how do we solve for this problem? And I think that that's a learning curve, and a lot of our customers starting on that front, where like they start as like, you know, is it just replacing what part? Should we rethink the entire system? How do we think about approaching the technology itself? And a lot more has gone into like, how do we scale? How do we make sure that we can go to production? How do we make sure that we can measure quality? How do we make sure that we can have continuous evaluation of the system in production and like making sure that like it is meeting all of the expectations? So it's definitely worth that wave one. And then, you know, I will say like, it depends because there's like different types of customers. You always have the early adopters, then you have the incumbents and like all of that. So I will say that like, at least for the ones that are in the forefront, that wave of like prototyping like has passed, and like we're seeing more and more like large scale, high volume solutions across our customers. Another trend that we've seen like interestingly shift is the one around fine tuning. So a couple of years ago, it was like, oh no, you shouldn't think about fine tuning because the models are evolving so fast that like, you know, if you fine tune a model and then the model already has like the capabilities, that actually has pivoted. There's a lot more customers using fine tuning for their specific data sets, right? Like for their specific domains. And like it complements not only the knowledge that the model has already embedded, but also like, you know, can help a lot on reducing costs. And fine tuning is another approach that has like, you know, picked up significantly over the last, I will say, 6 to 9 months.
Yeah. Awesome. My last question is getting you to look at a crystal ball and think of the future around human skills that need to be leaned into as we continue down this AI journey. If you're advising one of your boys around the skills that you think that they need that are going to give them longevity in their careers, what are you thinking about?
Look, I think that, and I've said it before in other forums, like we are an inflection point in human history. And this is definitely a transformation technology, and it's happening faster than we've ever seen before any other technology that has been like, you know, such transformational for humanity. In terms of skill set, I think it's really important for like, you know, regardless of your profession, like regardless of like where you focus on, regardless of how technical you are, that like you really spend time being curious and learning about what AI is, learning about like, you know, what it brings, like what is a chat completion model, what is a reasoning model, what is like the different modalities. You don't have to like go super deep, but like understanding like, you know, what is it doing underneath the covers to like generate some of the answers, like how does it get the knowledge, the fact that like, you know, there is all of this world knowledge, there is this models, a transformer thing, like that, just kind of like getting a general idea of what's happening, and then like give you an understanding of like, okay, this is a tool, and like how are you going to use that tool, right? Like bring benefit to you, like regardless of like the domain that you're working on. And I think that's a baseline. Every single one of us, right? Like to just like have that understanding, and then like constantly being, I think curiosity would be the theme of my guide, of my advice, is like be very curious about what's going on, and like how you might, like there's new set of capabilities, new set of applications. How are you going to like use this technology to like transform like the amount of output that you can generate, and like that can like look into many different things. It's like, for example, how can you make it be more efficient in things that you don't necessarily want to do,
yeah,
or so that you can spend more time on the things that you do want to do, right? So like I think that is one that I think is key for as we look into like next set of like months and years coming in, being curious about what's constantly coming.
It's been so good to have you on the show. Your enthusiasm is infectious. I love that final bit on curiosity. So powerful, and everybody can develop that skill in themselves. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Mark, thank you so much for inviting me. And for all of you developers out there, ai.azure.com, please come and visit us, like build with us, build agents, build applications. Like you'll definitely have all of the tools that you need to be successful in that journey.
Hey, thanks for listening. I'm your host, Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 guy. Is there a guest you would like to see on the show from Microsoft? Please message me on LinkedIn and I'll see what I can do. Final question for you. How will you create with Copilot today? Ka kite.